Okay, so database security, right? It's like this big, scary thing. We're diving into SqlSafeKeep today. They're all about making this whole database security thing, I don't know, maybe even kind of fun.
Yeah, it's like taking something that's really complex, right? And trying to make it way more accessible, like, for everyone, not just the tech people.
Right, because not everyone's a coder, thankfully.
Exactly.
So we got a bunch of stuff about SqlSafeKeep, like presentations, overviews. They've even got these like stories, real-world examples. When you were going through it all, what struck you at the core of like what they're trying to do?
For me, definitely the core is database auditing and compliance, but it's the how that I think is really interesting, right? They're really pushing this zero code approach.
Okay, zero code, so like even I could understand it.
Well, the idea is you don't have to be like super technical to get insights from your data. Imagine like you want to know who changed what in your database, but you don't want to have to like launch a whole IT project to figure it out.
Oh, so no more calling in the Geek Squad every time something seems off.
Exactly.
I like it. And they talk about this lighthouse dashboard. Sounds kind of fancy, right?
It is. It's like imagine getting an executive summary of all the activity happening in your database.
Okay, so like a highlight reel for data nerds.
Basically. And it's useful for all sorts of people, not just, the tech folks. A CTO can see, a system overview. Compliance officers, they can check if there's any GDPR violations. Even sales teams could potentially use it to spot trends in the data.
You mentioned GDPR. For anyone listening who might not know, that's the General Data Protection Regulation, big deal in the data privacy world.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed they kept mentioning HIPAA, too.
Right, HIPAA. So that's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act,
Correct.
all about keeping health information secure.
Exactly. Very important stuff. And it seems like SqlSafeKeep is really serious about being compliant with these standards right from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely a selling point for a lot of businesses.
Like having that peace of mind that you're not going to run into trouble down the line.
Right. And they actually give some really interesting examples of like real-world problems that SqlSafeKeep is designed to solve. There's that, remember that story about the military contractor?
Yeah.
Right before the 4th of July weekend?
Oh, yeah, where that critical compliance report just disappeared.
Yeah.
Talk about a stressful holiday weekend.
Right, and it turned out somebody had accidentally deleted some crucial data.
Oops.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of situation that SqlSafeKeep, with its real-time data lineage, is meant to address.
So data lineage, for those of us who, don't speak fluent database, what are we talking about here?
So data lineage is basically a history of your data, where it came from, who's accessed it, what changes were made to it. Think of it as like a really detailed paper trail.
Got it.
And SqlSafeKeep, it keeps track of all this stuff in real time, so if something does go missing, you can quickly trace its path and figure out what happened.
So less of the whole, like, digging through file cabinets, trying to retrace your steps kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. And they actually say that with this real-time monitoring, they could have pinpointed those data discrepancies, like, immediately. Imagine that security officer probably could actually enjoy their 4th of July.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about accidental data loss. But they also mentioned this price skimming fraud scenario, which honestly sounds a little bit like a heist movie when you think about it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So imagine you've got a database administrator and they decide to, tweak some prices in the system just slightly for like a short amount of time.
Okay.
They pocket the difference and then nobody's the wiser. Right? Yeah, it's surprisingly common.
Wow. That's pretty sneaky. So how would SqlSafeKeep catch that?
So that's where those instant change alerts that we talked about earlier, that's where they come in. It's like a security system for your data. So any unauthorized change to sensitive information, like, pricing, it triggers an immediate alert.
So you can catch the fraud as it's happening.
Exactly. Not months later when you're doing an audit.
So it's like, instead of waiting for the security camera footage after the robbery, you've got someone there, like, watching the security monitors in real time.
Exactly. And it's not just about, catching the bad guys. It's also about, like, understanding the why behind changes, right? And that's where they talk about this impact analysis, which SqlSafeKeep kind of highlights as like a future thing they want to do, like being able to see how, one change to your database could have like a ripple effect.
Okay, so help me wrap my head around that. Impact analysis, like a real world scenario where that comes into play.
Okay, so say you're a retailer and you're about to have like a big sale. So you change the price of like a really popular item in your database.
Right.
With impact analysis, you could instantly see like all the other areas that are affected by that one change. So we're talking your inventory systems get updated, your marketing campaigns, maybe even like your customer loyalty program.
Oh, wow.
It's all connected.
So it's not just seeing that price change in isolation. It's like seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly, exactly. And that, I think, really ties back to their whole thing, like their philosophy of making data less, I don't know, less mysterious, right?
Yeah.
And giving people the tools to actually use it and understand it.
They keep saying this phrase, secure by design, secure by default. They even shorten it to like SBDDURI, which, I don't know, sounds kind of cool, but what does that actually mean?
It's actually really important. So it means that instead of just like adding security features later as an afterthought,
Right.
SqlSafeKeep is built from the ground up with security as like the foundation.
Right.
It's not an add-on. It's like part of its DNA or something.
So it's not like building a house and being like, oh, we should probably put some locks on the doors.
Exactly, exactly. And they give some concrete examples of this, like data encryption, for example.
Okay, data encryption. Hit me with it.
So SqlSafeKeep, it uses both encryption at rest and encryption in transit.
Okay. For those of us who, maybe slipped through that part of computer science class, encryption at rest, encryption in transit. What are we talking about?
Sure. So encryption at rest basically means that your data is encrypted while it's just like sitting there in the database.
Okay.
Like it's in a locked safe.
Got it.
Encryption in transit means that the data is encrypted while it's being, transmitted between systems.
So even if someone like intercepts it, they can't read it?
Exactly. Unless they have the decryption key, it's just gibberish. And the cool thing is they're not just thinking about protecting the data itself, but also like who has access to it, right? It's all part of that secure by design idea.
Minimizing the weak points?
Right. Like how do we design this so that there are fewer places where things can go wrong in the first place?
And they're saying they can do all of this in a way that's user-friendly, even if you're not, a tech wizard.
That's the goal. They really are pushing this zero code thing. So like you don't need to be a SQL expert to set up audits or create custom reports.
Because who wants to spend their day writing code?
Right, exactly.
There are better things to do, like, I don't know, run your business.
Right. And so by making these tools more accessible, it's like they're saying, look, data security, it's everyone's job, right?
Well,
it's not just on the IT department.
It's a team sport.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to be the star player, but you got to know, like, the basic rules of the game.
I like that. Yeah. It's about collective intelligence, right? Empowering everyone to contribute. And they actually say this can even lead to, like, better productivity.
Yeah, they threw out some pretty impressive numbers about how much time SqlSafeKeep can save developers. Like, they gave an example where they took a 9-step process down to 2.
Yeah, it's a bold claim, for sure.
Yeah.
But if it works, I mean...
That's huge.
Right. And it makes sense because if you think about it, if you've got these detailed audit trails and you've got that real-time dashboard, developers can pinpoint problems way faster.
Right.
They're not wasting time, like, trying to hunt down clues. They can just go straight to fixing the issue.
So it's like having one of those, fancy rewind buttons, but for your entire database.
Yeah. And think about it, time equals money, right? So that kind of efficiency, it's a big deal for businesses.
Speaking of big deals, they also mentioned some of the more futuristic stuff they're working on. Anything in particular catch your eye there?
So one that I thought was really interesting is this idea of like predictive compliance monitoring. So imagine a system that can actually anticipate potential violations before they even happen.
Okay, that sounds, I don't know, kind of amazing and also maybe a little bit like creepy, right? Like how do you even...
Right. So they're talking about using machine learning. The idea is they can analyze historical audit data, maybe even like factor in external things like, industry trends, and then basically train algorithms to spot patterns that might suggest there's a compliance issue coming down the line.
So it's like they're building a crystal ball, but for data security, using the past to predict the future.
Exactly. And for industries with like super strict regulations, like healthcare, finance, government.
High stakes.
Huge. Even a small mistake can be a massive deal. So having a heads up like that would be... it'd be game-changing.
For sure. What else is on the horizon? Anything else catch your eye?
So they're also talking about, like, beefing up their data recovery options, going beyond, your typical backups. Imagine being able to reconstruct your database to any specific point in time.
Whoa.
Using those detailed audit trails we were talking about earlier.
So it's like the ultimate undo button.
Right. And for developers specifically, they're working on some really cool data anonymization tools, which would be huge, both for like speed and security. Imagine you can just instantly spin up a test environment, right?
Yeah.
And it's got all this realistic data, but none of the sensitive information.
So no more waiting around for someone to like manually scrub the data.
Exactly. Saves a ton of time and it's way more secure.
So much faster. I like it.
And then, again, it all kind of circles back to this theme of like, how do we make data more usable, right? While also making it more secure. They even mentioned this visual relationship explorer, which would let you actually like see all the connections in your database.
Ooh, so instead of just staring at lines of code, you'd get like a visual map.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with these really complex databases, I mean, that could be invaluable for just like understanding how everything fits together, spotting vulnerabilities. It's pretty wild.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've gone from like database auditing 101 all the way to futuristic features that sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's true. It really shows how fast things are changing in the data security world.
And how SqlSafeKeep is, I don't know, they're trying to keep pace, right? Stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. But, it's still early days. We'll have to see what they actually deliver, right?
Always have to wait for that part.
But even if they manage to do like half of what they're talking about, it could seriously change how we think about data security.
Yeah, it's like they're not just trying to build a better product. They're trying to create a whole new era. One where data is more transparent, more trustworthy.
Totally. And that's what makes it so interesting to watch, right? It's not just about like a single company. It's about this bigger shift that's happening.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you so much for breaking all this down for us. This has been incredibly enlightening, to say the least.
My pleasure. It's always fun to geek out about this stuff.
And for everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of SqlSafeKeep. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two. Until next time, stay curious and keep your data safe.